Good morning, everybody. Well, good afternoon, as the case may be. It is 1 o'clock here on this Wednesday afternoon here in Seattle, and we've got a fun episode. We're going to go through the entire cornerback group for the NFC West and rank them from best to worst. And it's a good day to do it. And it's a good day to have actually delayed the show a bit because the Seahawks made a move. If you haven't heard, the Seahawks signed cornerback Shaquill Griffin, formerly a third-round pick of the team back in 2017. He's back with the Seahawks. He had visited a while ago. We knew Rasul Douglas had visited. There was rumors that the Seahawks might make a move at cornerback. They've made a move, and they bring back a guy they have familiarity with. He has familiarity with this team. Obviously, new coaching staff, new scheme, all those things. But the 29, soon to be 30-year-old cornerback is back in the fold here in Seattle, and that affects this cornerback depth chart for the Seahawks. It affects the room, and we're going to talk about that today as we go through and familiarize ourselves with all the cornerbacks that are going to get playing time or expected to get playing time here in the NFC West. If you have not already given the show a like and click subscribe, now's the time to do it. Appreciate you for doing it. Only takes a second. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please give us a 5-star review. If you're not going to give us a 5-star review, at least give me a chance. Send me an email at brian@hawkblogger.com. Tell me why. Before you give us less than 5 stars, see if I can do something about it. But would love to get as many 5-star reviews as possible. And join over at patreon.com/hawkblogger. That is where you get ad-free audio of this show, access to our Discord channel, as well as verified over at hbtix.com, the only place where Seahawks fans can make sure that they sell their tickets to other Seahawks fans. All right. So the Shaquill Griffin news broke, I don't know, about a half an hour ago, and don't have details on what the price is. I'll give you my quick read of this. The reason I think that it's taken a little while for the Seahawks to make this move is I don't think the Seahawks wanted to pay very much money. And I've talked about this on the show before. I talked to a source over in the Seahawks organization that I think there's some of these veteran corners that wanted more money than the team was willing to offer. And when that happens, you're going to have a situation where those veterans are not going to be in any rush to get in for OTAs or minicamp. Like, they're not eager to do that. They'll just take more time off and they'll sign a lower deal later, closer to training camp. In this case, Shaquill Griffin is the guy that they ended up signing. Personally, I was kind of interested in Rasul Douglas. I thought as a physical corner, he might add a little bit of something different to this cornerback room for the Seahawks. Shaquill Griffin, in his defense, was a better cornerback last year than Rasul Douglas by almost any measure. And, he's a guy, we'll dig in a little bit about what he was good at and not in a bit, but he's a guy that the Seahawks have a pretty good idea what they're getting. So we will talk more about him in a little bit, but let's go ahead and do what we do on this series of episodes. We have done so far interior defensive line, defensive tackles. We have done tight ends on offense, and now we are getting into cornerbacks. So we're kind of go defense, offense, back and forth as I kind of work my way through all of these different position groups. So the first thing we like to do is just who's on the teams, and let's do a quick run through of who is on the cornerback depth chart for these various teams. Let's start with the San Francisco 49ers. And this is a team that, let go Charvarius Ward last year. So they have a little bit of change going on in their cornerback room. They have a second-round pick from last year, Renardo Green, who showed some promise as one of their corners. And then Diamador Lenore as another corner. He's been a very good player and a very talkative one as well. And then it gets a little bit more interesting from there and a little bit more of a question mark. They have currently Trey Brown listed as the starter at nickelback. They are playing Trey Brown at nickel. That's a position the Seahawks never played Trey Brown at, despite the fact he's a little bit on the smaller side. So curious to see how Trey Brown performs there. When we had Grant Cohen on the show last week, he talked about rookie Upton Stout, who, as you've watched this show, you know I was a big fan of leading up to the draft. Upton Stout has been playing quite well for them at nickel, and so he is competing with Trey Brown for that position. After Diamador Lenore and Renardo Green, you're talking about guys like Darrell Luter Jr. and Trey Avery, Chase Lucas, Dallas Flowers. It's a pretty thin group after those first couple of names. I would say even the Trey Brown Upton Stout competition is a bit of a question mark in terms of how good those guys are. But we'll get back and we'll look at those guys in a little bit more detail in a second. Let's go to the reigning division champs, the Los Angeles Rams. Who do they have at the cornerback position? They are bringing back Darius Williams, the veteran who's been with the team a couple of different times, played for them last year as well. And then you've got Ahkello Witherspoon, who is the veteran who played for the Seahawks, played for the 49ers, and also for the Rams last year. And I'm going to have to give you guys, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to do this. I have to pause. I have to help my son get on a bus real quick. 1 second. I will be right back. Apologies for the delay. Hold. Sorry about that, folks. It's a little bit of single parenting right now, and my son has to take a special bus. He's autistic, and he takes a special bus to get to work. And anyway, false alarm. But I might have to stop again a little bit later. Apologies for that, but I know you guys will be cool about it. All right, so back to it. So I was talking about the Rams and Darius Williams, Ahkello Witherspoon as their two outside corners, and then Quentin Lake is listed as their starter at nickelback. You know, he's a guy that's played safety for them before. And I'm kind of curious. I want to go back to the Rams last year to see who got the primary nickelback, the slot corner position snaps. And if I look at this, Quentin Lake last year, I mean, he played kind of all over the place. If you look at snaps by position for Quentin Lake last year, he played slot corner 511 snaps. So that was the majority, but he played 400 snaps at safety. So, I mean, that does seem like maybe his primary position, but I wonder about Kobe Durant as well. Snaps by position for Kobe Durant. He played mostly wide. He was 600 outside. He played 137 in the slot. It's interesting. Like their cornerback room is kind of odd. All right, so let's get back to it. So you've got at least now listed as their starter Quentin Lake at corner. And then after Darius Williams and Ahkello Witherspoon, you've got Kobe Durant, as I just mentioned. And then you've got an interesting name, Emmanuel Forbes Jr., who was just 2 years ago, a first round pick for the Washington Commanders. He's very, very light. He's very skinny, and that's one of the things that just didn't work in the NFL. The Commanders let him go. They waived him. So like the Rams picked him up last year, claimed him off of waivers, and did not play him much. And when he did play, was not very good. But early indications are that they feel like he's playing better this year. So he's a name to be aware of. Other guys, Cam Lampkin, Darian Kendrick. I think Darian Kendrick got some snaps for them last year. Let me double check if I'm just making things up. Maybe not. Maybe not. All right. So I might be making that one up. The name sounded familiar. Behind Quentin Lake, Charles Woods at nickel, Josh Wallace. I mean, it gets a little bit iffy at the nickel cornerback spot. So that is the Rams situation. We'll kind of get into analysis here in a second. Let's look at the Arizona Cardinals. And now this is a fascinating one to me. The Arizona Cardinals are very, very young. They lost their kind of only veteran to an off-season injury for the season in Sean Murphy Bunting. So they added a couple draft picks to what was already a couple of draft picks from the year before. Will Johnson is currently listed as a starter. He was a second-round pick this year. He was expected to be, in some cases, a top 10 pick, but had injury concerns and slipped all the way into the second round for the Cardinals to nab him. So Will Johnson is one. Max Melton, who was a second-round pick last year and was not very good when he played, brother of Bo Melton, former Seahawks pick, who's now in Green Bay. And beyond those two on the outside, you've got Garrett Williams at nickelback. And Garrett Williams is one of the best nickel corners in football. So he is their most established corner by far. After those initial guys, you're talking about Starling Thomas, who I want to talk more about. This is a guy that has some interesting advanced metrics that make me curious about him. Then after that, you've got Denzel Burke, who is another rookie this year, drafted, I believe, in the 5th round. Let me double check. When was Denzel Burke drafted? Not that it matters that much. He was drafted. Denzel Burke was drafted in the, I'm guessing, the 5th round, but this webpage is not loading. So we're still guessing. Denzel Burke was drafted. My goodness. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. I'm a little annoyed that I can't. Oh, yes, the 5th round. I was right. 174th pick. Okay. Sometimes you just got to know these things. All right. So Denzel Burke, 5th round, Ohio State, has been a well-known corner earlier in his college career, had a little bit of the grabsies his senior year, got some pass interference penalties and just was not quite the same player, but he's there as a backup. So that's, again, Will Johnson, Max Melton, Denzel Burke, all rookies or second-year players. Garrett Williams is also, if I'm right, I think Garrett Williams is only in his 3rd year. Garrett Williams was drafted. Garrett Williams was drafted in the 2023 draft, so 2 drafts ago. Yeah. So yeah, another, very young player in that secondary. And then after that, you're talking about Elijah Jones, who was a 3rd round pick last year. So another young player. And then at the nickel position, Catrell Clark, some other names that aren't, I don't think, worth really talking about. Jalen Jones, who has played some with the Bears, is on there. So the Cardinals have kind of an interesting room. It's very, very young. Has some potential to be very good if any of these new players of the last 2 years hit. So we'll talk about that room in a second. And then finally, the one that you're most familiar with, the Seattle Seahawks cornerback room, is now got an extra name in it. And the starters, Reek Woolen, Devin Witherspoon, Josh Jobe. Now you add to that Shaq Griffin as a player, likely behind Reek Woolen. You've got guys like Nehemiah Pritchett, who was a draft pick last year in the 5th round, did not play that well, but is there. Demarion Williams, who comes over from Baltimore as a nickel player. You've got guys like Zy Alexander, who's an undrafted free agent, and Isis Waxter, who's also an undrafted free agent, who might compete. You've got Shamar Jean-Charles, who was a free agent signing from the New Orleans Saints. And so you can kind of hear as you go through that list, it gets a little thin after the starters, and adding a guy like Shaq Griffin really helps to fill out that room with more certainty than it had without him. And maybe you're higher on Nehemiah Pritchett than I am, but after those starters, it does get a little dicey. And I think adding a guy like Shaq Griffin really fills out that room quite well. The starters, I'm not sure there's going to be a question that the Seahawks starters are the best of the bunch in the NFC West. We'll get into it a little bit more and find out if there's there's evidence to back up that perspective. But on first blush, without doing more of that digging, which we'll do here in a second, you've got two of the best corners in the division on one team with Reek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon. And I know people are not fans of Reek Woolen for whatever reason. I'm just telling you, the numbers don't support the notion that he is a bad player. He is a good player that makes some aggravating mistakes and has not been as complete of a player or as detailed of a player as you'd want him to be. But that doesn't mean that you'd rather have a guy like, I don't know, Trey Brown in this case. I don't mean to pick on Trey. I like Trey, but I don't think most teams would value him over Reek Woolen. I don't think most teams would value Renardo Green over Reek Woolen. I don't think most teams would value Darius Williams or Akella Witherspoon over Reek Woolen. So this is just the way it is. I'll talk about the numbers that back up some of the reason I feel that way in a second, but you've got that group. The other thing to know about the Seahawks group there is there are players at other positions that can play corner. For example, Kobe Bryant, drafted into the league as a corner, has played outside corner and nickel corner. He is now a starting safety. Nicky Manwari, who is a 2nd-round pick this year, is going to be playing nickel, basically corner/linebacker, quite a bit this year. So he fits into, I almost need to include him in this evaluation, even though technically he is listed as a safety. He's really going to be playing a lot of nickel corner kind of roles. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Julian Love has played nickel corner in the NFL. He has played outside corner even before. So you've got other players on the Seahawks roster that are good players that have cornerback backgrounds, even if they're not necessarily expected to primarily play that position this year. So let's dive in a little bit more, and we will talk about, who are these guys and how do you kind of separate one from another? And one thing we haven't done yet, I want to pull up, we're just going to look at Field Vision Pro. And by the way, I will show a ranking from other people outside of me, from PFF, from ESPN's Mike Clay toward the end of the show. But I want to show you some numbers as a way to look at these guys from Field Vision Pro. So let me pull this up so you guys can see what I am looking at. And this is just a visual, indicator of the cornerbacks from the NFC West last year. And what you see here is just kind of on one axis, you've got on the horizontal axis, you've got success rate when they're targeted. So to the right means is better. And then targeted EPA per 100 snaps or 100 coverage snaps. So again, higher is better. And what you see here, excuse me, The number one corner in the NFC West last year was Garrett Williams in both categories. He ranked number one in target EPA per 100 as well as target success rate. So that's part of why, like, I think Garrett Williams is one of the best in the top 5, maybe in the top 3 of slot corners overall in the NFL. He's quite good. He's very young. But you'll also notice right here, you've got 2 players, Reek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon, right next to each other. Devin Witherspoon ranked 4th in the NFC West in EPA per 100. He ranked 2nd in targeted success rate. Reek Woolen ranked 3rd in EPA per 100 and 3rd in success rate. So you've got 2 of the next best players on the same team. Now, this is an interesting one. I'll get to this in a second. Let me get to another more predictable one first. Deommodore Lenoir, the best corner for the 49ers. There's no doubt about it. And if it shows up here that he is in the top quadrant, he ranks 2nd in targeted EPA per 100 and 7th in success rate. So again, you're kind of getting chalk here of like Garrett Williams, Deommodore Lenoir, Devin Witherspoon, Reek Woolen. These are the guys that if you asked me the 4 best corners in the NFC West, those would be the 4 that I would name first. But listen to this. This next guy that shows up is Starling Thomas for the Arizona Cardinals. He ranked 5th in targeted EPA and 5th in targeted success rate. He's basically right there next to Reek Woolen. And the thing to know about Starling Thomas is, he was not a guy that I don't think anybody was talking a lot about. His PFF grade, for what it's worth, was 60.9. He did play 800 snaps. He is 25 years old. He was actually undrafted, but he was signed as an undrafted free agent by the Lions in 2023, but he's played the last 2 years for the Arizona Cardinals. He's 6 feet tall. He's 194 pounds. And I don't know. I was kind of fascinated to find his name in that upper right quadrant. That's not a name I expected to see. He is part of that roster. We'll see if that's something to keep an eye on. Now, the other 2 guys that are in the upper right-hand quadrant. One, the only Ram, Kobe Durant, ranked 6th in targeted EPA per 100 and 4th in targeted success rate. All right. I like Kobe Durant. I think he's kind of had an up and down career. And if you look at kind of what he's done over the years, let's see how PFF considers him relative to my read. Yeah, like his rookie year, he was a 73 graded player with a 74 coverage grade. He has failed to kind of live up to that in the next 2 years. He was a 57 graded player in 2023 and a 65 graded player last year, which is not terrible, but it's also not particularly great. He did only give up a 72 passer rating against last year. He did have a couple interceptions. So, he's a decent corner, but I don't think he's necessarily really in the same class as the other guys. Now, the last guy to show up in this upper right quadrant, you might be surprised to see. Josh Jobe, ranked 8th in targeted EPA per 100 in the NFC West and 6th in targeted success rate. So, the Seahawks have 3 of the 7 players to rank in the top right quadrant of this kind of 2x2, looking at targeted EPA per 100 and targeted success rate. That's kind of how I see the Seahawks cornerback room relative to the rest of the NFC West. I think they are established and complete, whereas these other rooms have some names, but not necessarily, any of them that are like high quality players. I do like Renardo Green, and he does show up at least from a targeted EPA per 100. He does reasonably well there, at least for the NFC West. Darius Williams is aging, and I think he's kind of on the downside of his career. Max Melton was not great. He was not great as a rookie, and I think the Cardinals have to hope he's going to be better. Ahkello Witherspoon was an interesting one where I thought he really started to play better as the season wore on last year. And he was a key reason that they ended up winning the division. He made the interception against Kyler Murray in the end zone in order to secure that victory that could have very well cost the Rams the division if he doesn't make that play. You'll see all the way down here in the lower left, the farthest lower left is Trey Brown. He ranked worst of all the cornerbacks in the NFC West last year in both categories, EPA per 100 and success rate. So, this is just looking at 15 different corners in the NFC West, and you kind of see the distribution of where these guys are. And I think it matches a lot of my perspective about, where they fit. Now, let's do this. I'm going to pull, I'm going to try to get every team back into this one. So let me get all the players back in here, and you're going to see this get very crowded. Let me share with you, if we look at some of these rankings, and this is looking at what Cody Alexander and others do for Field Vision Pro, they have a Havoc rating. And let's look at Havoc kind of on a normalized basis. And we look at who are the best corners in the NFC West. Let's go up a little bit to not have every single cornerback that's played a few snaps. Let's kind of narrow the field a little bit. So the top corner in the NFC West, Garrett Williams, as far as Havoc rating, he was 12th. And if I keep going down the list, we get to Diamador Lenore at 19th, Reek Woolen at 21st, Devin Witherspoon at 22nd. So it has Garrett Williams as the best, Diamador Lenore as the second best, but not much different than Reek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon, who are really tied for 21st. So again, you get another kind of view league-wide. These are, all top 20-ish corners, at least by this measure. And if you keep going down the list, Sean Murphy-Bunting, interestingly, was 35th. He is out for the year for the Cardinals. So that's a meaningful loss for them. So we keep kind of going through looking at these guys. Starling Thomas shows up at 49th, which is not bad. You'll notice Shaquill Griffin not showing up anywhere on here, and that's because I talked to the guys over at Field Vision. He's not in there. I looked for him. He's not in there. So I can't tell you where Shaq Griffin showed up for this. I would definitely do that if I could, but I can't. Kobe Durant is 56th. And as you kind of go down, Renardo Green, 62nd, Josh Jobe, 65th. Now, Max Melton was 66th. Now, you might say, like, those are pretty low rankings. Well, again, keep in mind that there's 2 starting outside corners for every team. That's 64 across the NFL. And then you add in nickel corners. That's 96 starting corners in the NFL. So if you're ranked in the top 60, that's still relatively good. And it's interesting to see Max Melton there. I don't think he was that good, but that's my read of the situation. I'm going to go to targeted EPA and look at that for a second and see where guys fall here. So from that metric, Garrett Williams was 7th in the NFL. So again, best in the division. As we kind of keep looking, Diamador Lenore was 23rd. You get to Reek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon. Once again, they are essentially tied at Reek Woolen's 30th, Devin Witherspoon's 31st. Starling Thomas is 33rd. I just find Starling Thomas to be a really interesting character in this story to figure out where he fits in all this. So I'm not going to spend much more time going through that. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time sharing kind of that there's some names that you might not think about as being quality corners in the NFC West. And I think what this does for the Seahawks is it allows them to lean into a competition there, let Josh Jobe really earn that job, which, by the way, Josh Jobe played really well in minicamp and OTAs. I think he looks like he's jumping to that. I also think Nick Emanwari has looked promising in the nickel position, and I think you're going to see a lot of him there. In fact, I think there may be a bigger competition for snaps between Nicky Manwari and Josh Jobe than between Shaq Griffin and anybody else. I think Shaq Griffin, more likely than not, is going to be a backup for the Seahawks. I think he is going to play a little bit of the Artie Burns role. If you remember Artie Burns for the Seahawks, he was kind of the vet, and he got some snaps, but he was largely a guy that was there when the team needed him. He did play for the team last year. He, ended up only playing in a couple games due to injury, but, he's a guy that might get a couple hundred snaps in a season. That's what he did in 2023. If you look at Shaq Griffin, again, he is 29 years old. He will be 30 in July. He'll be 30 by the time the team reports for training camp next month. He started for the Minnesota Vikings last year. He played 597 snaps. And the fact that he only played 597 snaps makes me wonder, did he start for them? That's kind of interesting. Let me go back and double check this, because I thought he was a starter for Minnesota last year. And I want to go back and look at whether that is the case. So Shaq Griffin was interesting. He was kind of a backup rotational corner for them behind Byron Murphy. At least what I'm looking at now listed Stephon Gilmore, Byron Murphy Jr., and Josh Metellus as the starters for the Vikings last year. Let's go back a little bit farther. Let's go back to October and see if that was still the case. That does seem to still be the case. So, correction for me. I thought Shaq Griffin was a starter for the Vikings last year. That does not appear to be the case, and the snap count kind of supports that. He only had 600 snaps. Now, 600 snaps is not like really deep backup. He's getting playing time every single game, but he ranged, I'm looking at it right now, he ranged between 20 to 60 snaps week in, week out. And he moved between left cornerback and right cornerback. Let's take a look and see snaps by position to see. He played 30 snaps at nickel, but he was a wide corner. That's what he's played his entire career. So, again, that just emphasizes even more the expectation that he is most likely going to be a depth player for the Seahawks. I don't think he is really fighting for a starting role, despite the fact he would like to probably do that. And I'm sure he was holding out to find out if there's a team where he had a better chance of being a starter. But at least for now, that's the expectation there, is that Josh Jobe will likely be the starter. And then you're going to have some competition from Nicky Manwari. And when he is playing nickel, you're going to have Devin Witherspoon playing outside. So let's take a little bit of a look at some of those players in more depth. So the Arizona Cardinals, for me, as I said before, are one of the hardest teams to project at this position because they are so young. If you look at that group, Will Johnson, he's an interesting player. Health is going to be a big issue. There's some question about whether his speed is going to be enough to be effective in the NFL. Time will tell. We don't know. Max Melton was not a guy last year that I thought was that great. PFF seemed to agree with me. He had a 54.5 grade. He also really struggled in run defense because he's a smaller guy. He had a 44 grade in run defense last year. If you go beyond that, I mean, if he's the starter, that's a pretty weak potential second corner at that position. And Will Johnson is a total question mark as your other starter at outside corner. You do have Starling Thomas, who I've spent more time talking about than I ever thought I would. And, he's a guy that played 800 snaps for them last year. He clearly could step in and play again. The guy that I am a little bit curious about is Elijah Jones. So Elijah Jones, I think he missed all of last year with injury. It looks like that's the case. And Elijah Jones was uh, drafted by the Cardinals in I want to say the third round in 2024. Yes, he was picked in the third round. He went to Boston College. He's a bigger guy. He's 6'1.5", 190 pounds. And he ran a 4.40. So he's a fast guy, 42-inch vert. He's like almost an 11-foot broad jump, like very explosive athlete. But he, missed time last year with injury. This is a guy that could make a big step forward for them. Don't know. Like, there's no way I can really tell you one way or another, and certainly not enough to really, include him as a heavy favorite to make a big impact in the division this year. Garrett Williams, I mentioned, he's very, very good. Like, he's just very good, and all the advanced metrics agree he's just very good. So I think the Cardinals are intriguing. They could be young and bad. They could be young and good, but they're going to be young. One way or another, they're going to be young. Usually, youth is not served in the NFL when that's all you have to offer. Usually, youth gets exploited, and time will tell with that. The 49ers are also an interesting group in that I like Renardo Green. I thought he played well for the 49ers last year. And I'm going to look here to see if PFF agreed with my perspective on Renardo Green. Let's see. Renardo Green. Where is he on this list? Am I just missing him? There he is. My eyes just went right over him. Yeah, PFF does agree with me. He had a 74 coverage grade, which is pretty damn good for a rookie cornerback. In fact, I want to look to see where that ranks among all rookie cornerbacks last year. Let's take a look at coverage last year for rookies, and we're going to look at just cornerbacks, and we're going to look at folks that were drafted last year. Number one rookie coverage grade last year was Cooper DeJean, 79.3. Number two was Andrew Phillips of the Giants at 77. And Renardo Green was number third among rookie cornerbacks last year with a 74.3 coverage grade. That's good. That was better than Kenyon Mitchell, better than Kamari Lassiter, better than Nate Wiggins, better than Kool-Aid McKinstry, better than Mike Sainristil. So I think he's an interesting player. I think he's a guy that could take a big step forward for the 49ers this year. It's still a projection. He was not great last year. He was just good. And some of the advanced metrics don't love him, and if I go back to Field Vision Pro and I look up Renardo Green, let's pull him up and let's see where he ranked. So he's the 84th ranked cornerback by their Havoc rating. He was the 21st in man, but the 94th in zone and 112th in run defense. So again, these corners increasingly are being asked to fill gaps in run defense, and they're being tested by offensive coordinators in run defense. And that might be something that is an issue. Certainly the Seahawks know that from history with Riq Woolen. But if you've listened to me before, you know that Riq Woolen, one of the least told stories among Seahawks fans last year was Riq Woolen's improvement as a run defender at corner. In fact, he was the 7th highest graded run defender at the cornerback position by the Havoc rating over at Field Vision Pro. And if you think that's crazy, just realize that he was also one of the highest graded cornerbacks from PFF perspective in run defense last year. He had a 76 grade in run defense last year. You want to guess what his run defense grade was the previous year? Try 37. You would think it was, better the first. No, it was 49 his rookie year. So you could say PFF grades are meaningless. They don't mean anything. Well, they definitely indicated he was terrible at run defense his first 2 years. Anyone that watched Seahawks games would tell you it was terrible the first 2 years. Now it's telling you he was very good in run defense, and there's multiple different places that are indicating he was a very good run defender last year at the cornerback position. So you might just be holding on to priors as opposed to allowing new information to come in and affect your perspective on a player. So I think Reek Woolen added weight. I think he improved in that position. He deserves credit for improving as a run defender. And we'll get more about Reek Woolen a little bit later. But point being, Renardo Green, not a great run defender. Diamador Lenore is an interesting guy. I want to look at Diamador Lenore. He, for all some of these other advanced metrics, he did not have as high of a run defense grade. Let's look up Diamador Lenore and see where he ranked, at least for Field Vision Pro. For Field Vision Pro, he was the 4th graded run defender. That's surprising. I didn't expect that. I think Ken Walker can tell you that he's shown a little bit of physicality to Diamador Lenore and thrown him to the ground, but that's pretty good. He was the 14th rated corner overall by Field Vision Pro, 36th in man, 77th in zone. So Diamador Lenore, also like no doubt to me, he is like the Garrett Williams of the 49ers cornerback room. And then you got Trey Brown, who had a really tough year last year. He was injured a little bit, but he's had injury issues. He's just not lived up to some of the hype that I think was merited from some of the play of his rookie year, his second year when he came in and looked pretty good. Upton Stout is a guy I really like. Maybe he can show up, but again, that's a rookie. It's a lot to bet on. After that, like Trey Avery, I gotta admit, I haven't not looked a lot at Trey Avery over the years. He played for Tennessee. Last time he played was 2023. He was a 44.2 graded cornerback that year. Other guys on the 49ers, I mean, do I really need to look up Darrell Luter Jr.? I mean, I will. I don't really want to, but I will. Darrell Luter Jr., he played with the 49ers 3 snaps last year. He played 64 snaps in 2023. Was a 5th round pick. I think the 49ers cornerback room is a problem. Let's just put it that way. I think the 49ers cornerback room's a problem, and not in a good way. Renardo Green, you're hoping takes a big step forward if you're 49ers fan. Diamador Lenore is good. And then it's a lot of question marks. All right. So then look at the Rams real quick, and before we kind of finalize at least my perspective on rankings. Darius Williams last year was okay. I don't think he was great. He was okay. Let's see what Field Vision Pro thinks about Darius Williams. They have him as the 81st ranked corner overall, 78th in run defense, 52nd in zone, 129th in man. The Rams really struggled against in man defense last year. That was just pretty much across the board. The other guy they've got is Ahkello Witherspoon. And if I pull him up on Field Vision Pro and figure out where he was ranked last year, Ahkello Witherspoon was the 124th ranked corner, 116th in run defense, 136th in zone. He was better in man, 44th. If I look at him and look at kind of his progression through the season. I thought he got better as the year went along. I'm looking at his grades in PFF. That doesn't necessarily match up. He did have a couple of good games later in the year, but he was a 65 graded player overall. His run defense, 62 coverage grade. So there aren't a lot of things to back up that Ahkello Witherspoon is really a quality player at this point. And then Quentin Lake, let's pull him up so we can. Quentin Lake. Let's see if he's even in here. Is he in here? Quentin Lake. There we go. They've got him listed as a safety, so I think he's going to be ranked as a safety, even though he played more snaps as a corner. Yes, they have him ranked as a safety. He was the 30th ranked safety, 23rd in run defense, 42nd in coverage. Again, that's a different look, having him as a safety. He mainly was playing nickel corner. If you look at him from a grade perspective, Quentin Lake last year, where'd he go? Quentin Lake. Well, it's not giving me an easy way to get to him. Let me do it this way. He was a 65 graded player last year, 80.3 in run defense, which is pretty good, and 59 in coverage. So you look at the Rams, and Emmanuel Forbes, if somehow he ends up being good, would be something, but this is a really skinny dude. I have a real question about whether he's someone who really can hold up in the NFL. He had a 39 overall grade last year, 39.9 in coverage. It's a lot of hopium to think that he's going to be a big step forward for them. And they just don't have Kobe Durant. I think Kobe Durant, if I could choose between Kobe Durant and Shaquill Griffin, I'd pick Kobe Durant for sure. But the problem is Kobe Durant is a backup for them. He's not a starter. And if you asked me to pick Kobe Durant and either of the Seahawks starters, I'd pick Reek Woolen or Devin Witherspoon. So I don't love this room. And honestly, as I kind of go through these rooms, I don't know if you guys feel the same thing that I do, but it feels like the Seahawks are here and every other cornerback room is down here. There's some really if you're looking at individual players, there's some high notes, but the rooms in general are really stacked with question marks outside of Seattle. Let me take a look real quick at so let me give you my rankings, and then we'll go and look and see what other people do. Before I do that, let me take a look at Super Chats. Brian Henderson has been a member for 10 months here on YouTube. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate you. Even though, I highly recommend you consider the I instead of the Y for Brian. It's really the better way to go. He says, thoughts on Jake Ellenbogen saying that the Rams have the best cornerback in the NFC West. Jake's a guy who, I don't know him personally, and I think he's had some pretty good takes at times. I will say, I'll give him credit. He was talking up Ahkello Witherspoon last year when everyone, including me, was kind of like, okay. And he played pretty well for them down the stretch. So I give him credit for that. I was very down on the Rams last year from a lot of evidence-based reasons, and they ended up being good in the playoffs and, proving that they were better than I gave them credit for. So I'm not going to completely set it aside. I will say to me, that's a joke. I don't think there's any evidence-based argument to be made that the Rams have a better cornerback room than the Seahawks. I don't think there is a single GM in the NFL that would choose the Rams cornerback roster over the Seahawks. I don't think it's close. So thank you for the super chat. Steve Holler says, Max Melton really struggled early on, but didn't give up a TD in the last 9 games and was stellar in the last 5 progress and growth. So I think Steve is a Cardinals fan, which is fine. I'm happy to have fans from whoever in here, as long as everyone treats each other okay. And if I look at Max Melton, I'll look at Max Melton's progression since you brought it up. And, I think not giving up a TD is not a great indicator. And by the way, he did give up a TD against Carolina in Carolina. So that's not quite accurate. In fact, at least by this, that's the only TD he gave up was at the end of the year. He gave up a 112.5 rating against Carolina. He gave up 118.8 against San Francisco. But I would say after week 9, he did seem to settle in a little bit and his coverage was a little bit better. So I think there's some reason to agree with Steve that there's some progress there from the Cardinals second round pick last year. All right. So my rankings for the NFC West, and I think it's the Seahawks are number 1. I don't think there's any question. I really don't. I'd love to really understand how somebody could come up with a different answer than that. Number 2, if we're looking at starters first, and I always want who's your starting players matters the most. I don't even think the Rams are number 2 for me. The question here is, this is a tough one, is Deommodore Lenoir and Garrett Williams, one on the Cardinals, one on the 49ers, one on the Cardinals, are better than any cornerback by a decent margin on the Rams roster. I think Renardo Green on the 49ers is better, is at least more, you've got more to go on with him than anyone that would be the second corner for the Cardinals, other than maybe Starling Thomas, who is kind of a surprising name for me. And then I really like the weakest link. If we look at it this way, the weakest link of the starting players, maybe it's Trey Brown for the 49ers at nickel. Maybe it's Darius Williams on the Rams. Maybe it's Will Johnson, or Max Melton on the Cardinals. I think it's Trey Brown. I think it's the 49ers nickel corner is the weakest link in the NFC West in the starting cornerback groups. And man, it's tough. I think I end up going with the Rams second, simply because I think their starting trio is at least credible. You're not crazy. And I think Kobe Durant is a good depth player who can fill in if necessary and be a starting level player. And then you have a little bit of a lottery ticket in Emmanuel Forbes if he works out. So I think I end up going there second, even though I think the ceiling for that room is lower than the ceiling for either the 49ers or the Cardinals. So I think I go Seahawks, Rams, and then after that, I think I go Cardinals and 49ers last. Is that how I go? It's tough to separate the Cardinals and the 49ers, to be honest. I like Renardo Green. I just like the amount of players that the Cardinals are going to be able to throw at this, that someone hopefully will develop for them if you're a Cardinals fan. So I think I have the 49ers last. I think that's where I'm going to stick for now. I'll go Seahawks, Rams, Cardinals, 49ers. And this has been a tough one, to be honest. It's a tough one because there's a lot of variables to it. There's a lot of youth and a lot of unproven players. So the only thing that's very clear to me is the Seahawks are the best. That's very clear. So let's go ahead and look and see if anyone else agrees with me. Let's look at the PFF rankings. First, this is an article that came out June 3rd, the top 32 cornerbacks. This is not teams. This is individual players. So let's just see where they have individual players. The top cornerback from the NFC West is Devin Witherspoon, ranked number 12 by PFF. He ranked 13th in their advanced coverage grade in 2024, 8th in the past 2 years. He's also been one of the best run defending cornerbacks in the NFL. And he's also a great blitzer. So that makes sense to me. So he's 12. Interestingly, Travarius Ward is 15th. He's no longer in the division. He goes to the Colts. After that, the next highest is Reek Woolen. So the Seahawks have the number 1 and the number 2 ranked cornerbacks from the PFF listing in the NFC West. Woolen gets overlooked a bit in the discussion of top cornerbacks because he hasn't replicated his rookie success in terms of interceptions, but his PFF advanced coverage grade across the past 3 years is 13th in the NFL. He's allowed just 0.72 yards per coverage snap since 2023, 6th best at the cornerback position. So again, Reek Woolen's better than you give him credit for. So that's the top 2. Then they go Garrett Williams at 22, Domidor Lenore at 23. And then from there, that's it. So the Seahawks have the top 2 corners, and then it goes Arizona and then San Francisco. So no Rams whatsoever in the top 32 corners, which matches my expectation. Let's take a look and see what Mr. Mike Clay did for his rankings. Again, I haven't looked at these, so I don't know. We're going to find out together. Mike Clay gives them a grade between 1 and 10, 10 being best. For the Rams, he gives the Rams a 4, a grade of 4 for the cornerback room. He gives the Cardinals a grade of 4 for the cornerback room. He gives the San Francisco 49ers a grade of 4 for the cornerback room, and he gives the Seahawks a grade of 7. So the Seahawks have the second highest graded cornerback room in the NFL. Oh, no, that would be third highest. Excuse me, third. There is a team. The Houston Texans have a 9 grade. The Seahawks have a 7. There are some teams that have an 8. So the Seahawks are among the better, and at least in this ranking, agree with me. There is the Seahawks, and then there's everybody else in the NFC West when it comes to the cornerback room. And this is before Shaq Griffin was signed. So maybe that moves up to an 8 if he's considering the depth and how that affects these rankings. So yeah, at least by those, it sure seems like my perspective. Like, I think it's kind of like after the Seahawks, it's like dealer's choice of what you like, what you care about when you're coming up with your cornerback rankings in the division. So that's where I go. I think that if I was to put like which of the groups that have the biggest potential to really jump this year and take a big step forward, I think Arizona has the biggest potential to take a huge leap forward. Then I would also put the Seahawks maybe next, because Nicky Manwari is part of that equation, and I think can absolutely be a huge addition. And I think Josh Jobe may play better now that he's kind of established himself. So I think those two groups are kind of the most intriguing overall. The Rams kind of just have guys that, maybe have a higher floor than the Cardinals or the 49ers, but I think their ceiling certainly is lower. All right, everybody. That will do it for this episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Hopefully you enjoyed it. The Seahawks have signed Shaquill Griffin. They have the best cornerback room in the division, according to me, according to Mike Clay, according to PFF, according to Field Vision Pro. Argue with it if you'd like. That's what we're all here to do and have fun together. But that will do it for this episode. Make sure you give it a like. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Appreciate all of you. Sign up at patreon.com/hawkblogger. Get ad-free audio for this show every single day, as well as access to the Discord channel where people are hanging out, having fun. We're talking Mariners. We're talking Seahawks. We're talking about TV. I watched the Velocipaster movie, a little bit of it yesterday, and we talked about that a little bit. So head on over to patreon.com/hawkblogger, sign up there. Also, will get you verified as a Seahawks fan on hbtix.com, the only place, hbtix.com, the only place where you can sell Seahawks tickets to Seahawks fans, and you can buy Seahawks tickets from Seahawks fans. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.